Hey everyone, on today's History in a Minute, we're going to be discussing the death of the 1960s. So, we've been discussing the 1960s all week, and today we're just going to talk about the end of that decade. The optimism of the 1960s really came crashing down in 1968, and it was marking a real turning point in American history. That year, the brutal Tet Offensive by North Vietnam convinced many Americans that the Vietnam War was just unwinnable. That led to deep division at home. President Lyndon Johnson shocked the nation in March when he announced that he was not seeking re-election. And that fall, Richard Nixon, appealing to the silent majority in America, won the presidency. Tragedy struck when Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy, two of the most influential, positive progressive leaders of that decade, were assassinated, deepening the sense of loss and just instability. Protests turned violent at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Police used tear gas and batons to break up demonstrators. There were furious anti war protesters that also seized Columbia University in New York, while similar uprisings erupted at the Sorbonne in Paris and the Free University in Berlin. Meanwhile, urban riots had flared up every summer since 1964, and they only intensified. But there were still some traces of the hopefulness of the 1960s. In the summer of 1969, over 400,000 young people gathered peacefully at Woodstock for the music festival, and it really captured, the spirit of peace and love of the decade. But by the end of the decade, the sense of unity and idealism had really unraveled. The legacy of the 1960s remains extremely complicated. It gave rise to empowerment and division, liberation and resentment, and it left a real lasting imprint on American politics and cultural life in our country. Until I see you next week, have a great rest of your day. And that has been your History in a Minute.